She told me I was nothing but a burden. And yet, it was my hands that built the very walls she wanted to sell. My name is William Harris. 72 years of life behind me, most of it spent in this little house on the edge of Springfield. Not a big place, not a palace, but mine. Every brick, every wooden beam, every nail had passed through my hands. I raised my children here, buried my wife after her long illness, and learned to live with silence when the laughter of family dinners faded into memory. This home was my anchor in a world that moved too fast for me to keep up. I spent mornings on the porch with a cup of black coffee, watching the neighborhood change. Kids grew up, houses were repainted, new cars rolled into driveways. And me? I stayed the same. The old man with the gray hair and a cardigan, the one who waved at neighbors even when they rarely waved back. My daughter, Emily, visited less and less after my wife passed. She lived in the city, busy with her job, her husband, and her little boy, my grandson. I didn't blame her. Life has its demands. Still, sometimes I wish she'd come sit with me, even just for 10 minutes, and let me tell her about the roses I'd planted or the new crack in the wall I was planning to fix. But when she did come, her words no longer carried warmth. "Dad, you can't stay here forever. This house is too big for you. Too expensive. Too outdated." I'd shrug, smile politely, and change the subject. Because what could I say? This was my fortress, my last tie to the life I once had. I couldn't imagine leaving it. Yet there was something in her tone that unsettled me. A coolness, a calculation, like she wasn't just worried about me, but about something else entirely. One Sunday afternoon, she arrived unannounced. No flowers, no cookies from the bakery, not even a smile. Just a thick folder in her hands and that businesslike expression she'd inherited from her mother. "Dad, we need to talk," she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table where the smell of coffee still lingered. I tried to lighten the mood. "If it's about the broken fence, I already called Tom. He'll fix it next week." But she didn't smile. She opened the folder and slid a piece of paper toward me. "A contract. For your own good," she began. "I've found a buyer for the house. They're willing to pay more than it's worth. You could move into assisted living, where people will take care of you properly. No more worries about maintenance, no more loneliness. Doesn't that sound better?" Her words froze in the air. For a moment, I just stared at her. The little girl I'd once carried on my shoulders now sat across from me, speaking like a stranger. "Sell my house," I whispered. She sighed, impatient. "Dad, you're 72. You shouldn't be living here alone. And honestly," she hesitated, but only for a second, "this place is a burden. To me, to you, to everyone." A burden. The word pierced me deeper than she realized. I wanted to argue, to remind her how this house wasn't just walls and floors. It was where she'd taken her first steps, where her mother had sung her to sleep, where we'd celebrated Christmases, birthdays, all those little milestones that made life worth something. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I simply folded the paper back into the folder and slid it toward her. "Not today, Emily," I said quietly. She frowned, frustration flickering in her eyes. "Dad, you can't keep resisting this. Sooner or later, you'll have to face reality." Reality. To her, reality meant selling off my memories for a price tag. To me, reality was that I was slowly losing the daughter I thought I knew. That night, after she left, I sat alone in the living room. My wife's photograph smiled at me from the mantel. I whispered to it, as if she could still hear me. "They think I'm useless now. They think this house means nothing. But you know better, don't you, Mary? You know what this place stands for." A storm rattled the windows outside, but it was nothing compared to the storm brewing inside me. For the first time in years, I felt the faint stirrings of something I thought I'd buried long ago. Anger. Quiet, steady, and sharp as a knife. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about four walls. This was about dignity. About not letting my own child strip me of the only legacy I had left. I didn't know how yet, but I swore to myself I would fight. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it comes with a calm voice, a smile, and a paper slid across the table. The week after Emily's visit, I tried to carry on as usual. I fixed the creaky step on the porch, watered the roses out front, and polished my wife's picture frame as though keeping her memory spotless would somehow keep everything else intact. But her words echoed in my mind like a cruel refrain. This place is a burden. You're a burden. Every corner of the house reminded me of her judgment. The kitchen where she once baked cookies with her mother, now reduced to a line in her speech about outdated appliances. The backyard, where I'd built her a treehouse with my own 2 hands, now just unnecessary land in her eyes. I couldn't escape it. And yet, I tried. Then came another Sunday. She arrived again, without calling, this time with her husband, Daniel. A tall man with a permanent smirk, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He shook my hand too firmly, like he wanted to prove something. "William," he said, "we've been talking, and we think it's time you start looking at retirement communities. Great places, really. Gym rooms, pools, medical staff around the clock. Much safer than rattling around this old place by yourself." I looked at Emily. She didn't meet my eyes. I forced a smile. "This old place has kept me safe for 70 years. I think it can handle a few more." Daniel chuckled, as if I'd said something foolish. "Come on, sir. You've got to think about Emily, too. She can't keep worrying about you living here alone. And honestly," he glanced around the living room, at the worn sofa, the faded rug. "You deserve better than this." That last part stung in its insincerity. Emily finally spoke. "Dad, we've already started some of the paperwork. If you'd just sign." I cut her off. "Paperwork? You started paperwork without me?" Her lips tightened. "It's for your own good. The sooner we get this done, the better." I felt the blood rush to my face. My hands trembled under the table, but I hid them beneath my cardigan sleeves. "Come, William. Don't let them see you break." "Emily," I said quietly, "this house is mine. It's not for you to sell." Her voice rose, sharp and impatient. "You don't get it, do you? You're not capable of living here anymore. You're just stuck in the past. And you're making everything harder for everyone." Daniel placed a hand on hers, pretending to soothe, but his eyes gleamed. "She's right. Don't make this more painful than it has to be." Painful. It already was. I stood, slowly, my knees aching but my back straight. "I need some air." I walked out to the porch, leaving them in the kitchen. I stared at the yard. My yard. The patchy grass I'd mowed 1,000 times, the roses I'd planted for Mary. My fists clenched. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, had already started erasing me from my own life. From inside, I heard Daniel's voice. "Don't worry, Em. Old men always come around once they realize they've got no choice." My jaw tightened. I wanted to shout, to storm back in, to demand respect. But instead, I just breathed. Quiet, steady breaths. I'd learned something in 72 years. Battles aren't always won with raised voices. Sometimes, silence is the sharpest weapon. When I returned inside, they were waiting, their folder open again. Emily pushed another paper toward me. "Dad, please. Just sign. It'll make everything easier." I looked at her, really looked. Her face was tired, lined not by age, but by stress and ambition. The little girl who once clung to my leg when thunder scared her was gone. In her place sat a woman who saw me as an obstacle. "I'll think about it," I said finally. Daniel smirked, satisfied. "That's all we ask." But inside, my decision was already made. I wouldn't sign away my life. Not now. Not ever. That night, I sat at the kitchen table long after they left. I traced the grooves in the wood with my fingers, the same table where Emily had once done her homework, where Mary and I had shared late-night coffee after she put the kids to bed. Tears welled in my eyes, but I blinked them away. Grief wouldn't save me. No, I would need something else. Something sharper. I whispered to the empty house. "You are not just walls. You are my history, my blood. They won't take you from me." And for the first time in a long time, a flicker of defiance warmed my chest. Because I understood something Emily and Daniel did not. A man may grow old, but he does not grow powerless. It's one thing to hear cruel words. It's another to see the ink drying on a betrayal you never agreed to. A few weeks passed. Emily didn't visit, didn't call, and for a time I almost allowed myself to believe she'd let it go. That maybe she'd realized her mistake, or remembered what this house meant to me. But in my gut, I knew better. Silence can be more dangerous than shouting. On a gray Tuesday morning, I walked down to the mailbox. My knees ached with every step, but I refused to let them slow me. The mailbox creaked as I opened it, and inside lay an envelope addressed not to me, but to current occupant. Strange. I carried it inside, tore it open, and the words leapt from the page like venom. Notice of sale completion. Property transfer confirmed. For a moment, my breath caught. My eyes scanned the letter again, slower this time, refusing to believe what I was seeing. According to the county office, the deed to my house had been signed over to someone else. But I hadn't signed anything. I felt my chest tighten. My heart pounded so hard I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. Could it be? Had Emily? My hands shook as I dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring, her voice calm, almost casual. Dad, I was going to call you today. I didn't want you to find out like this. Find out what? My voice was hoarse. That the house has been sold. I staggered back into the chair. You did this without me? Without my consent? She sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. Dad, you're old. You don't understand how these things work anymore. I had power of attorney from when you were in the hospital last year. Daniel and we just used it to finalize things. For your safety. Her words were smooth, rehearsed, but I heard the cracks. She'd planned this. She'd waited. You had no right, I whispered. I had every right, she snapped, her patience finally breaking. You can't take care of yourself. This house is falling apart, and you're dragging me down with it. I have my own family to think about. Do you even realize how much stress you cause me? How embarrassing it is, explaining to people why my father still clings to some broken-down house instead of moving into assisted living like everyone else's age. Her words sliced through me. I wanted to yell, to remind her of everything I'd done for her, of the years I'd sacrificed to give her a better life. But my throat locked. I could only sit in silence, the paper crumpling in my trembling hand. Finally, she said it. The dagger I'd feared was coming. You're useless now, Dad. Can't you see that? This is what's best for everyone. The line went dead. I sat frozen, the letter heavy in my grip. Outside, the sky darkened, a storm rolling in over Springfield. The rain began to patter against the windows, and the house seemed to sigh with me, its old bones creaking as though mourning its fate. I wandered from room to room, touching the walls, the furniture, the photographs. This wasn't just a house. It was my life, and my daughter had sold it like a piece of junk at a garage sale. The betrayal cut deeper than any insult ever could. I stood in the hallway, staring at the framed family photo from 20 years ago. Emily was smiling then, her arms around her mother's waist. We were happy. We were whole. Mary, I whispered to the photo of my wife. Our little girl doesn't see us anymore. She doesn't see this home. She only sees dollar signs. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my armchair, the glow of the lamp casting shadows across the room. My mind replayed every word Emily had said. Useless, burden, embarrassment. But something shifted in me. The grief twisted into resolve. If she thought I was powerless, she was wrong. I wasn't just going to let her erase me. Not from this house. Not from my own story. For 72 years, I'd been the man who fixed things. Broken fences, leaky roofs, scraped knees. And now, I would fix this. Quietly, patiently, but with a force she wouldn't see coming. The point of no return had arrived. I wasn't going to fight her with shouting. I wasn't going to beg. No, my revenge would be quieter than that. Like water carving through stone, it would take time, but it would leave its mark forever. And when it came, she'd regret every word she'd spoken. When the people you love treat you as useless, you learn to survive by remembering those who once saw your worth. The morning after I learned my house had been sold, I walked through the rooms like a ghost. Every corner whispered memories. In the kitchen, I still saw Mary in her apron, humming as she kneaded dough. In the living room, I could almost hear Emily's laughter as a child, her small feet pattering across the old rug. In the backyard, the empty treehouse stood like a monument to the little girl who once begged me to build it. Now all of it was slipping through my hands. But as I walked, my grief slowly sharpened into something else. Resolve. I pulled out an old photo album from the top shelf of the closet. The pages smelled of dust and time. There we were, younger, stronger, whole. Mary's smile lit up the pictures like sunlight. On one page, a photo of her and me, standing proudly in front of this very house the year we finished building it. My hands were rough from labor, her dress simple but elegant. I remembered what she had said that day. Promise me, William, no matter what happens, this house will always stay in the family. It's our heart. I'd promised. And now my own daughter had broken that vow. I felt shame and anger battling inside me. But above them both rose a cold determination. I could not undo what Emily had done, but maybe, just maybe, I could outsmart her. That evening, I called an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years, Robert Jennings, a retired lawyer who used to help me with small property disputes back in the day. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and a little surprised. "William? Well, I'll be damned. It's been ages." "Robert," I said, my voice low, "I need help. Family trouble, legal trouble, and I don't have anyone else I can trust." He didn't hesitate. "Then you did the right thing calling me. Come by tomorrow. We'll talk." The next morning, I put on my best coat, the one Mary had always said made me look distinguished, and took the bus downtown. The ride felt endless, my thoughts circling like vultures. I wasn't sure what Robert could do, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to just sit and let my daughter strip me of everything. When I arrived, Robert's office was smaller than I remembered, but tidy. He poured us both coffee, then leaned forward. "Now tell me everything." So I did. From Emily's first visit with the folder, to Daniel's smug remarks, to the letter declaring the sale finalized. Robert listened without interrupting, his brow furrowing deeper with every detail. Finally, he sighed. "William, if she had power of attorney from when you were in the hospital, then legally she could make decisions in your name. But," he tapped the table with his pen, "if she used it beyond the scope it was intended for, we might have a case. Power of attorney doesn't give her free rein to rob you blind. It has limits." Hope flickered in my chest. "So what do we do?" Robert smiled faintly. "We play the long game. Quietly. If we move too fast, she'll dig in her heels. But if we're careful, she won't even realize you're fighting back until it's too late." His words felt like a spark in the dark. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt less like a victim and more like a man with a chance. That night, I returned home and sat on the porch. The air was cool, the stars hidden by clouds. I spoke aloud, though no one was there to hear me. "Mary, I won't let them win. Not like this. Not after all we built." Inside, the house creaked as if in agreement. I began to plan. Small steps, invisible to Emily and Daniel, but each one leading me closer to reclaiming what was mine. And though the weight of betrayal still pressed heavy on my chest, beneath it, something else stirred. For 72 years, I'd been the man who fixed what was broken. And now, I would fix this too. Not with rage, not with begging, but with quiet, deliberate revenge. There comes a day when silence is no longer strength. Sometimes, to protect what's yours, you must let the storm break. The following week, Emily returned. No phone call, no warning. Just the sound of her car, doors slamming shut, and her heels clicking up the path. I sat on the porch, my coffee cooling in my hand. She didn't bother with greetings. "Dad," she said briskly, "we need to pack up your things. The new owners will be moving in by the end of the month. Daniel's already talked to them. They're excited to renovate." The words hit me like stones. New owners. Renovate. Pack up. I didn't move. I just looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, she seemed almost impatient that I hadn't broken down. "You can't stay here anymore," she continued, her voice sharp. "It's over. This house isn't yours. You'll have to move into the facility we picked out for you. It's already arranged." Something inside me snapped. "Not yours to decide," I said quietly. She rolled her eyes, exasperated. "Dad, stop being stubborn. You're embarrassing yourself. Do you want to make this harder than it has to be?" Embarrassing. She loved that word. She used it like a weapon. I stood, my knees aching, but I forced my back straight. "Emily," I said, my voice steady. "This house was built with my hands. Every board, every brick, every nail. I promised your mother it would stay in the family. And now you've sold it like it was junk in a yard sale." Her face hardened. "Mom's gone. And promises don't pay bills. I did what had to be done. You should be thanking me." My hands clenched at my sides. "Thanking you? For stealing from me? For calling me useless? For treating me like trash in the home I gave you life in?" For the first time, she faltered. A flash of something crossed her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold resolve. "You'll understand one day," she muttered. "But for now, this is final." Behind her, Daniel appeared, leaning casually against the porch rail. His smug smile was back. "Time to face facts, old man. The world's moved on without you. You can either leave with dignity or be dragged out looking pathetic. Your choice." That was the moment. The breaking point. I took a slow breath, forcing calm into my voice. You think I'm finished, that I have no fight left. But you've underestimated me, both of you. Emily frowned. Dad, no. I cut in, my voice sharper than it had been in years. Listen carefully. You've taken my trust, my love, and twisted it into greed. But this, I gestured to the house, the porch, the land stretching beyond. This is not gone. Not yet. And I will not leave quietly. Daniel laughed, a cruel sound. What are you going to do? Sue us? You've got nothing. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't the one on the defensive. I had Robert. I had a plan. And soon, Emily and Daniel would learn just how dangerous a quiet man can be when he's been pushed too far. Emily turned, her face pale, and grabbed Daniel's arm. Let's go. He'll come around eventually. They left in a storm of footsteps and slammed doors. Their car roared away, leaving only silence behind. I sank back into the porch chair, my hands trembling, not with weakness, but with adrenaline. My heart pounded like a drum. I whispered into the still air, Mary, I've stayed silent long enough. Now it's my turn. That night, I called Robert again. I told him everything, every cruel word, every smug smirk. He listened quietly, then finally said, William, it's time to strike. If she thinks she's won, we'll let her believe it. And then we'll pull the ground right out from under her feet. I hung up the phone and sat in the dark, the old house creaking around me. I wasn't the same man I had been weeks ago. The betrayal had cut deep, but in its place had grown something stronger. I wasn't just an old man waiting to be pushed aside. I was a father who had been betrayed. And soon, they would regret everything. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a seed planted in silence, watered with patience, and left to grow in the dark until the right moment. After Emily and Daniel's last visit, I didn't waste a day. My anger had hardened into purpose. If they thought they could erase me quietly, I would show them that silence could cut sharper than any scream. Robert and I met at his office the next morning. He greeted me with that same calm lawyer's face, but his eyes burned with energy. William, he said, sliding a folder across the desk, I've pulled some strings. Look at this. Inside were copies of the sale documents. He tapped one page. Here, the power of attorney Emily used. It's from when you were recovering after your heart scare, correct? I nodded slowly. Yes, Mary was still alive then. She signed it with me, just in case. Robert's lips tightened. Exactly. That document was temporary, limited to medical and financial decisions during your recovery. It expired after you regained capacity, which means, he paused for effect. Your daughter acted outside her rights. The sale is legally questionable. For the first time in weeks, a spark of hope lit inside me. So what do we do? I asked. Robert leaned back. We don't rush. If we file immediately, she'll fight. And people like Daniel? They'll twist the story, make you look senile. But if we move carefully, if we let her show her hand fully, we can strike in a way she won't recover from. I nodded. Quiet, deliberate. Just as I promised myself. The next step came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, Daniel himself arrived, without Emily this time. He strutted up my porch like he already owned it, a smirk plastered on his face. William, he said casually, just dropping by to remind you the buyers will be here next week to start planning renovations. Might be best if you started boxing things up. I stared at him. This is still my home. He chuckled. Not for long. Face it, old man. You're a guest here now. Maybe even a squatter, depending how the paperwork shakes out. Don't make this harder on yourself. I said nothing, just studied his face. He wanted me to argue, to break, to prove him right. Instead, I gave him silence. And in that silence, I made a choice. That evening, I called Robert again. I want to make sure this house doesn't end up in strangers' hands. Not ever. He hesitated. You mean? Yes, I said firmly. Even if the sale stands, I want the deed secured in a way Emily can't touch again. I want her locked out. Robert's voice sharpened. We can do that, but it'll require some creativity. A trust fund. A transfer into an entity she can't control. Do it, I said. The plan was set in motion. Quiet paperwork, hidden from Emily and Daniel. They thought they'd won, but while they celebrated, I was already building a wall they couldn't climb. At night, I sat in the living room, staring at Mary's photo. I spoke to her softly. You always said I was too soft on her. Maybe you were right. But not this time, Mary. This time, she'll learn. I began writing notes. Memories of this house, every sacrifice I'd made, every promise we'd built into its walls. If Emily wanted to reduce my life to a dollar amount, I would leave behind proof of everything she'd dismissed. Not just for me, but for my grandson. One evening, when I saw Emily's car pull up, I hid the papers in my drawer. She walked in with that same commanding tone. "Dad, you haven't packed a thing," she scolded, glancing around. I gave her a faint smile. "Maybe I'm waiting until the last possible moment." She huffed. "You're impossible." But as she left, I noticed something. For all her coldness, her voice shook ever so slightly, like a crack in her armor. She thought I was broken. But really, I was just waiting. And soon, she'd discover that her betrayal had planted something dangerous. Not just anger, not just defiance, but revenge, quiet, patient, and already blooming. Grief is not a wound that heals with time. It's a scar that aches when touched, and betrayal is the cruelest hand pressing against it. The nights grew longer, and sleep rarely came. I would sit in my armchair with a blanket pulled around my shoulders, the house dark except for the faint glow of a lamp. Silence pressed against me, heavy and unrelenting. It was in those hours that the past visited me most vividly. I would see Mary again, not as the frail woman she'd been at the end, but as the strong, gentle presence she had always been in my life. I saw her standing in the garden, hands stained with soil, laughing as she scolded me for planting the rose bushes too close together. I heard her voice in the kitchen, soft and steady, telling Emily bedtime stories when she was just a girl. Those memories brought warmth, but they also sharpened the ache. Because now, my own daughter, Mary's daughter, had turned against everything we had built together. One night, I pulled out a box from under the bed. Inside were Mary's journals. She had always written, every evening, neat cursive lines filling notebook after notebook. I opened one at random, dated the spring of 1989. "William fixed the porch today, even though the doctor told him to rest his back. He says this house is more than wood and nails, it's our legacy." I believe him. One day, Emily will understand. My chest tightened. Tears blurred my vision. Mary had believed in me, in this home, in the promise that one day Emily would see its worth. But instead, Emily had sold it. To strangers. For money. I closed the journal carefully, almost reverently, and placed it back in the box. Then I whispered into the empty room. "Mary, she doesn't see. But I will make her. One way or another, she'll understand what she's done." The next day, Robert called. "I've started drafting the trust," he said. "We'll transfer the property title into it once we get the timing right. She won't be able to touch it again." His voice steadied me. I had allies, even if they were few. That afternoon, Emily showed up again, this time without Daniel. She walked through the door like she owned the place. Her eyes scanned the shelves, the photographs, the worn furniture. She shook her head. "Dad," she said softly, "why are you making this harder than it has to be? Look at this place. It's falling apart. You deserve better." I studied her face. For the first time in a long while, I caught a glimpse of hesitation, a flicker of doubt. She still believed her own words, perhaps, or maybe she just wanted to. "You think better means sterile walls and strangers feeding me pills," I said, my voice calm. "But better, for me, is here. With the memories. With the life I built." She crossed her arms. "Memories don't pay taxes, Dad." "Neither does greed," I replied quietly. Her lips parted, but she had no answer. For a long moment, we stood in silence. I saw her eyes wander to Mary's photograph on the mantel, and I wondered, did she feel even a trace of shame? Or was it just annoyance that I wouldn't give in? Finally, she sighed. "You'll see I was right, eventually." She turned to leave, her footsteps sharp against the floorboards. I waited until the door closed behind her, then let my mask fall. My hands shook, not from fear, but from rage barely contained. I sat back in my chair, staring at Mary's picture. She's lost, Mary. She's blind. But I'll make sure she doesn't take the rest of our lives with her. Outside, a storm rolled in, thunder rumbling low in the distance. The air smelled of rain, heavy and electric. I welcomed it, because storms cleanse. They wash away the dirt, the lies, the betrayal. And deep inside, I knew, the storm was only beginning. Sometimes the sharpest blade is hidden beneath a handshake and a smile. They thought I surrendered, but really, I was planting the trap. Robert called me on a damp Thursday morning. His voice was calm, steady, but I could hear the undercurrent of urgency. "William," he said, "Emily and Daniel will come soon with more papers. This time, you'll sign, but you won't be giving them what they think." I frowned. "Sign? After everything?" "Yes," he replied. "We'll use their greed against them. I've prepared a parallel document. It looks like consent, but in reality, it reroutes authority into the trust we're creating. Legally binding. They won't even realize until it's too late." A strange mix of fear and satisfaction stirred in me. My daughter thought she'd cornered me, but instead, she was walking into my net. That evening, right on cue, Emily arrived. Daniel was with her again, holding that damned folder like a trophy. They didn't even sit down this time. "Dad," Emily began briskly, "we need your signature today. The buyers are waiting. If we delay, the whole deal could fall through." I looked at her, my face calm. "And what happens to me, Emily? Where do I go?" She waved a hand, impatient. "We've already arranged the facility. It's comfortable. You'll be fine. You'll be fine." As if she were talking about shipping off an old sofa. Daniel stepped forward, placing the folder on the table. "Here's the contract. Just sign at the bottom. Nice and easy." I sat slowly, my fingers steady though my heart pounded. The papers were there, official seals and all. But on top of them, slipped in by Robert earlier, was the altered document. Identical in appearance, but different in power. I uncapped the pen. For a moment, the room was so silent I could hear the rain tapping on the window. Emily and Daniel leaned closer, hungry for victory. Then, with deliberate strokes, I signed. Daniel exhaled in satisfaction, snatching the folder back like a vulture claiming its meal. Emily's shoulders relaxed for the first time in weeks. She even smiled, a cold, triumphant smile that twisted my stomach. "Finally," she said, "you did the right thing." I met her eyes. "Did I?" She frowned slightly, as if puzzled by my tone. But she didn't linger. They left quickly, their laughter echoing as the car drove away. The moment they were gone, I picked up the phone and called Robert. "It's done." He chuckled softly. "Good. They think you surrendered. But in reality, all authority has shifted. From now on, the house is no longer under their control. It belongs to the trust, and you're the beneficiary. They can't touch it." Relief flooded me, but it was mixed with sorrow. It shouldn't have come to this. I shouldn't have needed to outweep my own flesh and blood. That night, I poured myself a small glass of whiskey and sat by the fireplace. The flames flickered, throwing shadows across the walls. Mary's photograph watched me from the mantel, her smile gentle but resolute. "I signed, Mary," I whispered, "but not the way they think. I gave them enough rope. Now, we'll see what they do with it." I thought of Emily's face when she saw the truth, when she realized her father wasn't the weak old man she'd imagined. Would she rage? Would she cry? Or would she finally understand the cost of her betrayal? The fire crackled. Outside, the storm grew heavier, thunder rolling over the house like a warning. I leaned back, the glass warm in my hand, and allowed myself the smallest of smiles. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, the power was shifting. And soon, they would discover that the signature they celebrated was the very key to their downfall. The cruelest thing about betrayal isn't losing what's yours. It's watching the betrayer smile, convinced they've already won. For several days after signing, I remained calm. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, didn't try to reclaim anything. Let them think I'd surrendered. Let them taste victory. That was part of the plan. Emily and Daniel celebrated openly. They didn't even bother hiding their joy. One evening, while scrolling absent-mindedly, I stumbled across a photograph Emily had posted online. She was standing proudly in front of a shiny new car, crimson red, holding the keys up like a prize. The caption read, "Finally upgrading. Hard work pays off." Hard work. She didn't mention the truth, that her upgrade was bought with my house, my life's labor, the very walls that sheltered her childhood. The next day she arrived, glowing with triumph. In her hands were shopping bags from a luxury boutique. Around her neck hung a necklace that caught the light like fire. She looked younger, energized, like betrayal had breathed new life into her. "Dad," she said brightly, "I knew you'd do the right thing eventually. This was the best choice for everyone. You'll see." I looked at her, calm, Steady. I'm glad you're happy, Emily. Her smile faltered for a second. Perhaps she'd expected me to rage, to break down, to beg. But I only sat quietly, as if I'd accepted my fate. I know you're angry with me, she continued, placing the bags on the table. But one day you'll thank me. In the home we picked out, you'll be cared for. No more loneliness. No more stress. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. She said it the way someone talks about storing away old furniture. I nodded, swallowing the bitter taste in my throat. But inside, something else pulsed. Satisfaction. Because she truly believed she'd won. That her father was beaten, stripped of dignity, too tired to fight. Yes, I murmured. Perhaps you're right. The words were for her benefit, not mine. Inwardly, I almost laughed. Because I knew every penny she was spending, every luxury she flaunted, was borrowed from a future that would collapse beneath her feet. She went on and on about new furniture she planned to buy, about the vacation she and Daniel were already booking. Each word cut like a knife. Not because I envied her, but because she was parading her betrayal as if it were an achievement. Still, I sat there, nodding as if in agreement, playing my role. After she left, I lingered by the window, watching her shiny new car pull out of the driveway. For a moment, doubt clawed at me. Was I doing the right thing by staying quiet, by letting her celebrate a false victory? Then I remembered Robert's words. Let her relax. The more secure she feels, the harder she'll fall. Yes, he was right. That night I sat at my desk, writing a letter, not to Emily, but to my grandson. In careful strokes, I told him about this house, about his grandmother, about the nights she and I spent fixing broken tiles or repainting walls. I told him how this home was our heart, how promises had been made to protect it. Someday, when you're older, you may read this, I wrote, and you'll understand. Family isn't always about who shares your blood. Sometimes, those closest to you forget what truly matters. But never forget, a house can hold more than wood and brick. It holds memory, sacrifice, and love. Your mother forgot. I pray you never do. Tears stained the paper. I wiped them quickly, forcing myself to keep writing. This was my way of preserving what Emily had tried to erase. In the days that followed, I perfected the performance. When Emily visited, I left old magazines packed in boxes on the table, a few clothes folded neatly, as though preparing for a move. She smiled with relief, thinking I'd finally accepted my place. But the truth was different. The real documents, those that secured the house beyond her reach, were already in Robert's safe. Out of her grasp, out of her control. When I was alone, I spoke to Mary's photograph. Let her celebrate, Mary. Let her believe she's victorious. The higher she climbs on her stolen throne, the harder she'll fall. And when she does, when her lies collapse around her, I'll still be here, on our porch, in our home, waiting. And for the first time in weeks, my heart felt lighter. Not because the pain was gone, but because justice had already begun its slow, silent march. Greed blinds people. They only see the prize in front of them, never noticing the traps snapping shut beneath their feet. A week later, Emily called me with a voice that carried pure triumph. Dad, she said, it's official. The sale has been processed, the buyers are confirmed, and everything is done. You'll have to start moving your things this week. It's no longer your house. She said it so casually, like she was telling me the weather. I remained quiet for a moment, letting her savor the illusion. Then I asked softly, who bought it? Oh, just some investment group, she replied quickly, dismissively. It doesn't matter. They're planning renovations, probably going to resell it at a profit. You see, everyone wins. Everyone, except the man who built the house. Except the father she betrayed. I didn't argue. I only said, I see. The next day, I received an official notice in the mail. On the surface, it looked exactly like what Emily had said. The house was now under the ownership of a property investment trust. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the trust wasn't some faceless company. It was Robert's creation. When I met him later that afternoon, his grin said it all. She thinks she sold it to strangers, he said, tapping the stack of papers. But the deed is secured under the Jennings family trust, which, conveniently, has only one lifetime beneficiary. You. They can't touch it. Not Emily. Not Daniel. Not anyone. I exhaled slowly, my chest tight with relief. So, I still live here. Legally. Not just live, Robert said firmly. You own your future. They can't evict you. Can't force you out. As far as the law is concerned, you're untouchable. I leaned back, a slow smile creeping across my face. Emily had strutted around, drunk on victory, but in truth she'd handed me the key to her own undoing. That evening, Emily and Daniel came by in person, glowing with smugness. Daniel was the first to speak. Well, William, looks like the old place will finally be put to good use. The buyers want to gut half of it, modernize, maybe even tear down that ugly porch. About time, if you ask me. I clenched my jaw but said nothing. Emily looked at me with a mock softness. Dad, you really should start packing. Don't drag this out. It's easier if you let go. I nodded, calm. You're right. Change can be surprising. She tilted her head, confused by my tone, but brushed it off. They left soon after, already dreaming of how they'd spend the rest of their money. The moment the door shut, I sat down on the porch, the night air cool against my skin. I thought of Mary, of her words so many years ago. Promise me this house will always stay in the family. I whispered to her picture inside. It has, Mary, and it will, no matter what Emily believes. The irony was sweet. Emily thought she had stripped me bare, left me powerless. But in her arrogance, she had only handed me a stronger shield than I'd ever had before. She would keep celebrating, keep spending, keep sinking into a false sense of security. And when the truth finally reached her, that her father still sat in the very home she'd claimed to sell, her smile would shatter. And that moment would be worth every ounce of patience. Arrogance makes people blind. They kicked down the door, never noticing the wall of stone standing silently behind it. The day came faster than I expected. A black SUV pulled into my driveway, its engine rumbling like thunder. Emily stepped out first, her heels clicking against the concrete, her face set in determination. Daniel followed, his smirk firmly in place, holding a clipboard like a sheriff ready to issue an eviction. I sat on the porch as I always did, coffee in hand, the morning sun soft on my face. To them, I must have looked like a man who had already surrendered, sitting in the ruins of his defeat. That illusion pleased me. Emily strode up the steps. Dad, she said sharply, the time has come. The buyers are ready to take possession. We need you to pack your things and be out by the end of this week. I'll even help arrange movers, but you can't stay here. Daniel leaned on the railing, grinning. This is no longer your house, old man. It's time to move on. I looked at them both, let silence linger, then sipped my coffee. That's so. Emily crossed her arms. Yes, the sale went through. Legally, you don't own this place anymore. It's done. Don't make this harder on yourself. I set my cup down carefully, as if I had all the time in the world. Funny thing, I said softly. Because last night, I slept in my own bed. I cooked breakfast in my own kitchen. And here I am, sitting on my own porch. Doesn't feel like I've moved out at all. Emily's brows furrowed. Don't be difficult, Dad. You signed the papers. You agreed. You can't just sit here pretending nothing changed. Daniel pulled out the clipboard with theatrical flair. I've got the documents right here. The house belongs to the Jennings family trust now. You're a guest at best, maybe even a squatter. At the sound of those words, I leaned back in my chair, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a smile. The Jennings family trust. I repeated slowly, savoring the confusion on Emily's face. Yes, I've heard of them. Nice folks. Daniel scoffed. Doesn't matter who they are. Point is, you're not the owner anymore. So get ready to move. I reached into the small drawer of the porch table and pulled out a thin envelope. Inside was a letter with Robert's seal, notarized, official. I unfolded it calmly, handed it toward Emily. Then you'd better read the fine print, I said. She hesitated, but curiosity won. Her eyes skimmed the page, and with each line, the color drained from her cheeks. Her lips parted in disbelief. This says, her voice trembled, that the sole beneficiary of the Jennings family trust is you. Daniel snatched the paper from her hands, scanning furiously. His smug grin vanished, replaced by a twisted scowl. This can't be right. This is some trick. No trick, I said evenly. You wanted me gone. You thought you sold the house to strangers. But all you did was hand it back to me in a stronger way than before. This home is untouchable now. No one, not you, not Daniel, can touch it. Emily's knees seemed to weaken. She sat heavily on the porch step, staring at the letter as if it were written in fire. But I thought. You thought I was useless. I cut in sharply, my voice colder than it had ever been with her. You thought I was weak. You thought I'd roll over and let you steal everything I built. You forgot, Emily. I may be old, but I'm not dead. And I'm not stupid. Silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the distant caw of a crow. Daniel finally snapped, his face red with fury. This isn't over. We'll fight this in court. You can't just. You'll try, I interrupted quietly. And you'll lose. Every time. Because for once, I'm not fighting alone. I've got the law on my side. And all your greed has left you with nothing but debt. Emily buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Whether from anger, shame, or fear, I couldn't tell. Maybe it was all three. I rose slowly from my chair, my legs stiff but steady. I looked down at them, my daughter and the man she chose, and for the first time, I felt no weakness, no defeat, only strength. This is still my home, I said firmly, and it always will be. They left soon after, their car roaring away in frustration. I stood on the porch long after the sound faded, the house solid and strong beneath my feet. I whispered to Mary's photograph inside. We won, love. She tried to erase us. But this house, our legacy, still stands. And deep in my chest, for the first time since Emily's betrayal began, I felt peace. Sometimes the loudest answer is no answer at all. Silence, when chosen carefully, can weigh heavier than 1,000 shouted words. The confrontation on the porch left its mark. Emily hadn't expected it. She had walked in with the confidence of a conqueror and left with the realization that her throne was made of paper. And when arrogance crumbles, it leaves only rage. 2 days later, she returned alone. No Daniel this time. She burst into the house without knocking, her footsteps heavy, her face flushed red with fury. She slammed the door behind her so hard the frames on the wall rattled. Dad, she snapped, storming into the living room where I sat in my chair. What the hell is going on? How did you do it? How did you trick me? I looked up from my newspaper, folding it neatly before setting it aside. I didn't answer. She threw the envelope with Robert's seal onto the coffee table. This, she shouted. This paper. I've read it 100 times, and it doesn't make sense. You're the beneficiary? You? After everything we did to finalize the sale? Her voice cracked, more from desperation than authority. I leaned back in my chair, my hands folded calmly in my lap. The house is protected, I said softly. That's all you need to know. She shook her head violently, her eyes burning. No, I need to know how. Did you go behind my back? Did you hire some lawyer to twist things? You tricked me. I met her gaze, steady, unwavering. Or maybe you tricked yourself. Maybe you were so blinded by greed you didn't see the walls closing in. Her mouth opened, but no words came. For a moment, she just stood there, trembling, her hands balled into fists. You don't understand, she finally spat. I did this for you. You can't live here forever. You're old, you're fragile. I was only trying to help. I let the silence hang. A silence so heavy it seemed to echo off the walls. She paced the room like a trapped animal, her heels clicking against the floorboards. Say something, she demanded. Anything. Don't just sit there like you're better than me. Still, I said nothing. Her face twisted, half fury, half despair. You think you've won? You think this little trick changes everything? You've humiliated me, Dad. Do you even realize what people will say when they find out? That I tried to put my own father out of his house. That I wasted money we didn't even have because I thought you were too weak to fight back? Her voice grew shrill, breaking. Do you want me to look like a monster? Do you? Finally, I spoke, but my voice was calm, almost gentle. You don't need my help for that, Emily. You did it all on your own. She froze, her eyes wide. The words cut sharper than I intended, but I didn't regret them. For a long time, she stood motionless. Then, slowly, her shoulders slumped. Her anger gave way to exhaustion. She sank into the chair across from me, her face pale. I don't understand you, she whispered. Why couldn't you just let go? Why couldn't you just accept what I was trying to do? I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. Because this house isn't just walls. It's my life, your mother's life, your childhood, and you threw it away for money. You broke a promise you didn't even know existed. Her lips trembled. For a moment, I thought I saw tears gathering in her eyes. But then she blinked them away, her jaw tightening once again. This isn't over, she muttered, standing. I'll find a way. I always do. I didn't rise. I didn't argue. I just watched her walk out, her footsteps fading into the distance, the door slamming behind her. And then I let the silence return. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the final word. Money gained by betrayal never lasts. It burns faster than firewood, leaving nothing but ashes and regret. Weeks passed. I kept to my routines, quiet and steady, while Emily's life spun faster and faster out of control. She and Daniel flaunted their so-called success like peacocks, feathers spread wide for everyone to see. They threw parties in their polished suburban home, the driveway lined with new cars they barely knew how to drive. From the porch, I watched it unfold piece by piece. Neighbors whispered about Emily's good fortune, marveling at how she suddenly had so much. I smiled quietly to myself, sipping my coffee, knowing what they didn't. That her fortune was nothing but sand built on a tide that was already receding. It didn't take long before the cracks showed. One evening, Daniel showed up at my house uninvited. He looked more tired than smug this time. His shirt was wrinkled, his smile forced. "William," he said, trying for his usual charm, but failing. "We need to talk. You see, Emily's been under a lot of stress. The buyers, well, they're pushing harder than expected. Renovations cost more than planned. The money's stretched thin. If you could just lend us a little, just until things stabilize." I cut him off with a raised hand. "No." His face hardened instantly. "Don't be petty. We're family." I looked him dead in the eye. Family doesn't steal from family. He left soon after, muttering under his breath, the mask slipping further. Not long after, Emily came herself. She didn't barge in like before. This time she knocked. Her face was pale, her eyes rimmed red. I could tell she hadn't been sleeping. "Dad," she began softly. Things aren't going well. Daniel made some bad investments. The car payments, the house upgrades, it's all piling up. We just need a little help to get through. Please." I studied her carefully. This wasn't the proud, triumphant woman who had waved contracts in my face weeks ago. This was my daughter stripped bare, the weight of her choices pressing down on her shoulders. I wanted to comfort her. A part of me ached to reach out, to remind her that I was her father, that I had once promised to protect her no matter what. But then I remembered her words. "You're useless now, Dad. You're a burden." And I knew this was the lesson life had brought her to. "You have a son, Emily," I said quietly. "Think about him before you think about yourself. I'll never let him suffer. But you and Daniel? You made your bed." Her lips trembled. "So you won't help me?" I didn't answer. Silence was sharper than rejection. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away, anger flickering back in their place. "Fine," she hissed. "Fine. But don't think this makes you better than me. You just got lucky." She stormed out, her heels clicking faster than ever, but her shoulders sagged. For the first time, she wasn't the conqueror. She was the defeated one. That night, as I sat on the porch, the air cool and still, I thought of Mary. "She's falling, love," I whispered. "Not because of me, but because of her own greed. And I'll let her. Because sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones learned at the edge of ruin." Inside, the house creaked softly, as though it agreed. Emily's downfall had only begun. When pride collapses, it doesn't break clean. It shatters, leaving jagged pieces that cut the very hands that once held it. It was late evening when I heard the knock. Not sharp, not arrogant, not demanding like before. This time, it was hesitant, weak, almost pleading. I opened the door and found Emily standing there. She looked nothing like the triumphant daughter who once waved contracts in my face. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes rumpled, and her eyes were swollen from crying. She clutched her purse like it was the only thing tethering her to the earth. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. For a moment, I said nothing. I just stepped aside, letting her in. She walked slowly, her heels dragging across the old floorboards, and sank into the same chair she'd once claimed with authority. Now, she looked small in it. I sat across from her, silent, waiting. Finally, she broke. "It's all gone, Dad. Everything. The money from the sale, the cars, the jewelry. Daniel invested in something stupid, and now we're drowning in debt. He's talking about leaving." And her voice cracked. She buried her face in her hands. I don't know what to do. The silence between us was thick, heavy with all the words we'd spoken before, all the wounds she'd opened with her betrayal. I watched her shoulders shake as she cried, and a part of me, the father I used to be, wanted to comfort her. But another part, the man who had been called useless in his own home, remained cold. "You thought selling this house would fix your life?" I said quietly. "But greed doesn't build. It only destroys." She lifted her face, tears streaming. I know I was wrong. But please, Dad, please help me. I don't have anyone else. You're all I have left." Her words pierced me, but not enough to erase the memory of her cruelty. "Emily," I said, my voice firm, "I will never let your son suffer. He is innocent in all this. If he needs food, clothes, shelter, I will provide. But you?" I shook my head slowly. "You made your choice. You chose greed over family, and now you live with it." She sobbed harder, reaching for me across the table. "Please, I'm still your daughter. Don't turn your back on me." I leaned back, folding my arms. "You turned your back on me first. You called me a burden. You stripped me of dignity. You tried to erase me from the very place I built with my own hands. You didn't just betray me, Emily. You betrayed your mother's memory." Her face crumpled. "I know," she whispered. "I'll regret it for the rest of my life." "Good," I said simply. "Then the lesson has finally been learned." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked on the mantel, the house creaked softly, and somewhere outside, the night insects sang. Finally, Emily stood, her legs trembling. "I'll go," she said softly. "I can see I don't deserve your forgiveness." At the door, she paused, turning back. "But do you hate me?" I looked at her, and my heart ached. "No, Emily, I don't hate you. Hate would mean I still carried you in my heart. But you chose to cut yourself out of it." Her tears fell silently as she turned and walked into the night. I closed the door behind her, leaning against it with a long, heavy breath. Then I looked at Mary's photograph on the mantel. "She broke herself, Mary," I whispered. I didn't have to raise a hand. She did it all on her own. And now, I'll protect what matters. Not her, but the boy. Our grandson. He'll know love. He'll know truth. Even if she doesn't. The house was quiet again. And though my heart still carried the ache of a father betrayed, there was also a strange peace. The storm was nearly over. Victory is not always loud. Sometimes it is found in the quiet breath of peace, in the walls that still stand, in the dignity no one could take away. The house was quiet again, just as it had always been after storms. But this time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was soothing. I woke early that morning, the sun rising slowly over Springfield. Golden light filtered through the curtains, painting the familiar walls in soft warmth. For years, I had feared this house would be taken from me. Now, as I walked from room to room, I knew with certainty it would outlast me and remain mine until my last breath. In the kitchen, I brewed a pot of coffee the same way Mary used to. The smell filled the air, rich and comforting. I poured myself a cup and stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked beneath my weight, but it was strong, steady, just like me. As I sat there, the memories washed over me. Mary in the garden, her hands covered in soil. Emily as a little girl, chasing butterflies in the yard. Christmas mornings, birthday cakes, summer evenings when the whole neighborhood would stop by for lemonade. This wasn't just a house. It was a living, breathing testament to a life built with love and sacrifice. And though my daughter had tried to erase it, she failed. The sound of laughter broke my thoughts. I looked up and saw my grandson running across the lawn, his small backpack bouncing against his shoulders. He waved to me with that pure, innocent smile only a child can carry. "Grandpa!" he shouted, rushing up the porch steps. I knelt down, my knees aching but my heart light. I hugged him tightly, breathing in the scent of childhood, grass, sunshine, and safety. He didn't know the full story yet, but one day he would. One day he would understand why his grandfather fought so hard for this place. "Grandpa, can we play in the treehouse later?" he asked eagerly. I smiled, brushing a hand over his hair. "Of course, son. That treehouse isn't going anywhere. Neither am I." Emily stood at the edge of the yard, watching silently. Her face was pale, drawn with regret. She hadn't spoken much since the last time, and I didn't expect her to now. She had learned the hardest lesson of all, that some betrayals can never be undone, only endured. Our eyes met across the yard. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. She turned away, her head bowed, and walked back toward her car. I didn't call after her. I didn't need to. My silence had spoken louder than any words could. When the car disappeared down the street, I sat back on the porch, my grandson beside me. He leaned against me, chattering about school, about friends, about the future. I listened, smiling softly, my hand resting on his small shoulder. This was my legacy, not Emily's greed, not Daniel's arrogance, not the betrayal that nearly destroyed me. It was here, in the steady walls of this house, in the laughter of a child who still believed in love, in the dignity I had reclaimed. I looked toward the horizon, the sun breaking fully into the sky, and whispered to Mary, "We kept our promise, love. This house is still ours. She'll regret what she did forever, but we still have peace." The porch creaked, the roses in the garden swayed in the breeze, and I closed my eyes, breathing in the morning air. Not as a burden, not as a man stripped of worth, but as William Harris, a father, a husband, a builder, and the keeper of a legacy no one could steal. And in that quiet moment, I finally felt victorious.